This episode is for the writer who stares at their computer screen wondering what to do next. You scroll through your manuscript document and feel at a loss for how you actually need to be spending your time. You're at the stage of writing where everything about your manuscript feels messy, and it is. Today, we're going to decode that for you and give you your next right step when it comes to your writing and editing. Let's get started. Most weekends this year, it's 2025, I have been diving into different organization projects. It's been a while since I've done deep decluttering in our house. And so I've taken a small section at a time for the weekends when I can, right? And so I did our game closet one weekend, pulled everything out. It was really messy and, pulled out what games to give away. How much trash do I store in my closets? Blows my mind. Threw away a bunch of trash and then reorganized it, and now it's nice and tidy, right? A couple of weeks ago, I decided to do this with my bookcase, and I have several bookcases in my home. I have a small home, and so I don't have as many bookcases as I'd like, but I decided to tackle one of them. And with this bookcase, there's something funny with the pins that are not long enough. It's like an old IKEA bookcase, and so the shelves don't actually, when there's a lot of books on there, it bows out. So it was really messy, and it was time for me to kind of really tackle it. So I take all the books out. So I'm just surrounded by piles of books. I take the shelves out, and I think that I will have the pins that I need to make it longer, but the ones that I had didn't work. So I was stuck here, just surrounded by a couple hundred books, easy. And I was like, great, what do I do now? And so I had to just kind of do a makeshift solution. It's still messy. It's not as messy as it was, but I'm looking over right now, and there's still just stacks and stacks of my stuff, of my books around here. And it's this project that I started that I was really into at first, and then my project got really messy and really overwhelming, and it's still not finished. Does this sound familiar? Can you relate to this? Whether you have also been dealing with your own home organization projects or with your writing. When you are writing your memoir, you usually start out with a lot of energy. I don't know if I've ever met a memoirist who decided to start out who wasn't feeling excited about it, but you're excited. And you have these ideas, and so you pour all of this energy and time into the process, and you end up often with tens of thousands of words. I've met with writers who have written over 100,000 words for this first draft, and they are excited, but that initial excitement can only take you so far, right? You reach a point, this is the creative process, really. You reach a point where that burst of inspiration and excitement that started you on this journey and kept you going has faded a little bit. And now you're looking at your computer, looking at these files, maybe you printed off your manuscript, but you're looking at it and feeling completely overwhelmed because you have this huge project. And you know that it's messy. You know there's stuff that's not working, but you don't know what to do with it. This is like my bookcase where I don't have the tools I need to actually fix it yet. So now I'm just stuck with this mess in my corner here. That is where you are at with your writing. And there's a lot of reasons why you think your manuscript isn't working, why you think that you're stuck. When writers come to me, they describe this in a lot of ways. They feel stuck. They feel overwhelmed. They feel like something isn't working, but they don't know what it is. Sometimes they feel like they've pinpointed where their bottleneck is. That happens sometimes. But there are some misconceptions about why your manuscript isn't working. And I want to talk about those first today. The two that I see the most are, I need to write more. Like you think that it's not clicking because you haven't written enough. This usually happens with maybe a lower word count. I feel like someone who's written 100,000 words or more, maybe in the opposite camp where they've written too much, but they don't know what to do with it. But you think that it hasn't clicked because you just haven't written it yet. So you just keep writing without really much of a plan. That's one misconception that writers have about their book not working. The second misconception is that they need to edit more. And I have seen writers go over their revisions and their work over and over and over and over and over. And it gets them stuck in this revision cycle, this spiral, where they think that, okay, let me just rework this one scene again. Let me go back again. Let me send it to another reader. You keep moving the finish line and it never feels finished because you're not actually focusing on what the actual problem is. Okay, so let me name those two misconceptions one more time for you. The first misconception is you think that you need to write more. You just haven't written it yet. If you write more, then something's going to click. The second misconception is that you need to edit more. And that also doesn't work. It just keeps you stuck in the mess. It's like if I looked at my bookshelves and I just kept moving around the piles trying to make it work with the shelves that are broken. Okay, that's what over editing is going to look like. The truth about your messy draft is actually very simple. And this is either going to kind of clear the fog for you and make you think, okay, this is something I haven't tried before, or it might make you a little frustrated because it's that simple. Writing more isn't your solution. Editing more isn't your solution. Clarity is. And let me go into what I mean by clarity. And often when I meet with writers, I actually just met with a writer, but he was writing and he just didn't know what was working and what wasn't. He just felt a little foggy as to what his manuscript is actually trying to do. This is very, very common for writers, for memoir writers particularly, because the myth about memoir is that a well-written story will automatically be a compelling story, when those two actually don't equate. The art of crafting a compelling story is a different skill set, different tools, different frameworks from actually writing well, writing something that sounds good, right? So, and this is the surprising reason why traditional writing advice can often fall short for memoirists, because we're cutting out or we're overlooking one of the biggest pieces, like the biggest piece of the puzzle, as far as I'm concerned, is it's that clarity about your draft, about your story. Unlike fiction writers, you have all of the material, you have a set amount of material to work with, right? You are working within the confines of lived experience, and there are creative liberties that you can take with that, but you are working with a set of events, a set of experiences. And your job as a memoir writer is to craft that into a compelling narrative, into a compelling structure. But you can't do that if you are not clear on the story that you're trying to tell. There's a lot of ways to come at story. There's a lot of ways to come at a narrative. If you even look at news headlines, for example, you can see one event told in many different ways from different media outlets. Different media outlets give a different spin on the same event. The same can be said of your story. So you need to decide what your spin is. You need to decide what it is that you're actually trying to say with your story. This is the clarity that I'm talking about. And it's this clarity that so many memoir writers are missing. Or maybe they started out with some clarity, but then it got muddled and they lost it along the way. So whenever I work with writers, the very first thing that we do together is figure out this clarity. We really dial in on your story and figure out what you're actually trying to say. So this is the what, who, and why of your story. What are you writing? Who are you writing for? And why are you writing it? This is the really simple framework for clarity. If you can answer those questions specifically and concisely, then you are well on your way to having the clarity that you need to direct your draft. Knowing this message, having this lens, will make everything from structure to editing to marketing so much easier. So if you are in this really messy draft phase, I want you to ask yourself, what am I writing? Who am I writing for? Why am I writing it? I know those are really big questions, and so you can spend some time on them. This is what I help writers walk through all the time, and I have lots of resources to help you out with that. When writers are in this really messy draft phase, they will come to me thinking that they have a structure problem, that they need to figure out how to sort out the events of their story. And structure is really important to memoir. It's really important to know how to tell your story. But usually, almost always, these writers don't have a structure problem. They have a clarity problem. And when you're not clear on the story that you're trying to tell, then you can't structure your memoir in a compelling way. Any work that we would do as far as structure goes would still be muddled. It still would feel off, because we wouldn't have that clarity piece in place. And that's why I have a very specific method and framework for working with writers. We figure out the clarity first. We dial that in. It's like going to the eye doctor and when they flip the lenses through and they say, is this more clear or is this more clear? A or B, B or C. That's what we do with your manuscript to make sure that what you are crystal clear as the author on what this story is trying to do. And it's okay if you're not sure about that. That is what an editor is really helpful for, especially with memoir, because you're so close to the source material. Having someone else come in and be objective, that can be really helpful to the process as well. So as we wrap up today, your homework, I guess, is to contemplate what you're actually trying to say with your memoir. If you want to work on your manuscript this weekend, I advise you to actually not open up your draft at all, but step back and focus on your clarity, because you don't have a structure problem. You have a clarity problem. That's the biggest shift I want you to make today. Once you see this messy draft for what it is, which is a draft that's lacking clarity, editorial clarity, then you can start to make the shifts in the structure and the narrative. But those structural edits, that work is not going to be effective if you are not clear first on what you're actually trying to say with your story. So let me recap really quick. Your memoir feels unruly because you don't have clarity. It's not because you need to write more. It's not because you need to edit more. I actually want you to stop working on it right now. I want you to stop revising those same passages over and over. And I want you to dial into what you're writing, who you're writing for, and why they need to care about it. And once you dial into that clarity, that's where everything is going to come together for the rest of your manuscript. So next Friday, we are going to talk about the hidden thread that holds your memoir together. This is a concept that I have a lot of writers struggle with. I hear it talked about a lot, and so I'm really excited to talk about it with you on the podcast. If you are unsure of how clear you are on your memoir, I do actually have a quiz for you. I'll include the link to that in the show notes. It's a very simple quiz sent straight to your email, and it's a great way to kind of self-assess where you are in the drafting process and kind of where you need to focus your attention as far as clarity goes. So I will add the link to that in the show notes. You can go sign up for that. Next Tuesday, our writer story is going to be about a writer who thought that they were there. They felt really good about it, but then everything in their memoir kind of fell apart. And we're going to talk about what we did with it and how we kind of pieced it back together in a way that was really satisfying to the writer and to her reader. So thank you so much for joining me. Have a wonderful weekend. Please feel free to email or DM me with your insights about clarity into your memoir, and I will see you next week.